We are now about to talk about how to create an amazing culture to retain people. And for this discussion, I am welcoming amazing speakers. Let me change the slide. Yes. Amazing speakers. We have Charles from Facebook, Julia from AWS, and Eleonora from Mind Valley. I'm going to introduce you to them. So very briefly, because you're going to meet them, Julia is responsible for helping startups scale and achieve their fullest potential using AWS infrastructure and technology. She works on partnering with the most influential incubators, accelerators, and startup organizations in France, like the Family, for instance. And of course, we have another amazing speaker, Charles Guillemet. He has more than 10 years of recruiting experience in the Silicon Valley. He's currently heading up product leadership, recruiting at Facebook. And prior to Facebook, he was head of recruitment at Neuralink, meaning that he was working closely with Elon Musk and his chief of staff to fill some of the most niche positions in the world. He also scaled Gusto from 30 to 600 employees in 3 years, leading a team of 30 recruiters across 2 offices. He's passionate about scaling processes and obsessed over efficiency. And last but not least, Eleonora Valenti. She believes that working careers are a way for us to express ourselves. Her mission is to help others define their core drive and purpose. I'm so thrilled that she is here at Mind Valley. Eleonora is hiring world-class talent from all over the world to join one mission, raising human consciousness and shaping the future of education. I don't know if you know Mind Valley, if you are already aware of what they do, but it's really, really, really amazing. So welcome to the 3 of you, Charles, Eleonora, Julia. How are you?
Hi guys.
Hey.
Nice to meet you.
I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for being here. So maybe in a few words, we could start by describing your company's culture, because it's all about culture, okay? How to create an environment where people feel at ease to stay, and they are happy to stay, actually. They don't want to go anywhere else. They are happy here. How would you describe the culture in your company? And can you give me a few examples of how it plays out in employees' life, and what remain as well, and what has changed with COVID? Maybe, allez, let's give the first round to Charles. He's the man.
Cool. Hi guys, nice to meet you. So I'm Charles. I am currently in the US, so it's daylight for me. I think, a couple of things when you want to retain folks, and this summit is really about recruiting and hiring. It starts at the very, very beginning. It starts at the process that you have in place when you want to hire folks. Like, what are the attributes? What are the elements in the company, at your company personally, that are really important to retain folks? What makes them top performers? What makes them happy? And how do you screen against that? So I think every companies that I've been at, whether it's Gusto, Neuralink, Facebook today, you will realize that at every interview process, you essentially have like questions and bank of questions that are screening against attributes that are really important to your own company. So I will start there because essentially as you recruit and interview folks, you actually enforce that culture over and over time with your own employees, right? Like they start identifying to it, they start relating to it, and they really live and breathe those attributes as they interview candidates. So my first advice, if there's anything that we can remember, is essentially like there are a couple of top performers at the company. There's a few folks that have identified top attributes that really embodies the culture of your company. Like, let's start screening against those, and let's start running interviews against those attributes.
Cool. Thank you, Charles. Maybe we could switch to Julia.
Hi everyone.
So, yeah, Amazon's culture and our values are driven by our very famous leadership principles, which aren't just a pretty inspirational wall hanging, right? These principles work hard, just like we do. And we use them every day, whether we're discussing ideas for a new project, deciding on the best solution for a customer, or interviewing candidates. It's just one of the things that makes Amazon very peculiar. We hire, we reward, we promote based on these leadership principles. And when I think about culture at Amazon, we have a strong culture of innovation, and we hire builders. And we also learn from failures, and this encourages employees to innovate. Anyone has an Amazon Fire Fund or heard of an Amazon Fire Fund? No, right? Well, we built a fund and no one wanted to buy it. But we took the teams and the learnings from building a fire fund and we moved them around Amazon. And you've seen innovations like Amazon Alexa, where many of the technologies that we used to build the fire fund were used. We also built something called Amazon Auction because we wanted to compete with eBay. Didn't go well, but again, we learned from that and we built a marketplace. And now we have Amazon Marketplace and AWS Marketplace. So if you have to remember one thing, these innovations came from Amazon employees. The same Amazon employees who are customer obsessed, who are willing to fail and take risks, who are willing to be misunderstood, and who have that unique culture.
Thank you, Julia. Very clear. Eleonora, how would you describe the culture at Mindvalley?
Hi everyone, where to start? This is such a key question for Mindvalley, and I'd like to answer by starting with my own experience. So I joined the company a bit more than 2 years ago. Imagine that I was coming from more of a corporate environment. So I worked for Nike for more than 6 years. And then what I knew before joining Mindvalley is that Mindvalley had a huge, bold mission, which is to transform education and replace the traditional way of education with lifelong learning. So I knew that there would have been a lot of growth, technology involved, and I knew that the team was very young in a sense of creative spirit. I knew that it was very international, but when I actually landed in Malaysia, this is where I'm based right now, this is where the headquarters is, it was like beyond my imagination. And even the first month in the company, so the first day they told me, take it easy, we don't start meetings before 10:30. So we believe in morning autonomy and you have time to study, working out, do your work, whatever you prefer. And then the first meeting of your onboarding day is going to be 10:30. So surprise number one. And then a few other surprises was that in the company at the time when I joined was about 250 people, and we already had more than 55 different nationalities. So even in Malaysia was an extremely diverse team. And that was so exciting that, and the team was so proud of it, that traditionally we always had culture days to celebrate the most represented nationalities and cultures in the company. So that element of fun and sharing was always there. So that is one of the key things, of course, with what people talk about, play hard and work hard. But for Mindvalley, the fun part and the play part, the connection part was really, really important. So this is to give some examples of what the foundational values of the company have been, because the way our CEO and founder built it, and this for sure has been on unity, so believing in that diversity and already accepting people from everywhere in the world. So talking about remote later, this was a very natural thing for us. The second aspect is envisioning, so always looking at what about the future. Let's not just get stuck on what we're doing right now, but what is next? What is the next innovation? This is very much part of the culture. And the third but not least, because we are an education company, and especially transformational education company, we believe not just in learning, but in really transforming lives. This is what we do for our customers. This is what we do for our team. So it means that learning, being curious, trying, and innovating are key parts of how we do things. So that connection aspect, that fun aspect, for sure, it's still part of our culture, but we are still reinventing the way we do things virtually, for sure.
Yeah, and you are totally embodying this international culture because you're an Italian based in Malaysia, working for a Silicon Valley startup, right? At the beginning, the story of Mind Valley is in Silicon Valley, right?
In New York, actually, was founded. But Vision, he studied, worked in California for a little bit, then founded Mind Valley in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, and we often go back to the story of the founder, you know, and that's a way to understand the culture. I often see, and especially for the early stage startups, right? We know that the culture is directly coming from the founders, and the founders they represent that culture. And we often, when we are exterior to the company, we look at the founders. We try to understand their lives. The founders now of big companies are becoming almost stars, and we follow them, right? And there is. Their story is really important for the culture of the company. Do you feel close, to the founder of the? I mean, spiritually, emotionally, or very concretely in terms of organization? Do you feel close to the story of the founding team? Maybe, yeah.
I'm happy to take this one. So I won't talk too much about Mark Zuckerberg, because I think everybody can read things online about Facebook. But there's the company that I was at before, prior to Neuralink and Facebook, was called Gusto, and that was really, really important to them, to the co-founders, to essentially like kind of engrave what they are thinking about the company and how they wanted to scale the culture. And to go back to what Julia mentioned about Amazon, Amazon is incredible about the way they've scaled that from probably the very top all the way to the bottom at scale with like thousands and thousands of people. But I think it's actually duplicatable, right? You can do that at a startup as well. You can come up with like a couple of attributes that your co-founders really like embody. It could be like, hey, I want my employees to have no ego, or I want my employees to have like a builder mindset, or I want my employees to be like company first or mission first. And whatever is really important to the co-founders, you can essentially like boil down to a couple of like ways to screen against that. And again, I think it comes back to the founders really identifying like the 4 to 5 core values that they really, maybe with Amazon there's 13 of them or 14, but with a small startup you can start with like a couple of nuggets of like 4 to 5, and then look for those as they're really important for the founders, and then you can teach your employees how to look for those when you talk to the candidates and when you interview candidates. And then after time it sort of like becomes like what you live and breathe over and over again for and so to go back to your question, I really think this is the influence of the co-founders. That's how they influence the culture of the company over and over again.
That was just a question like that coming up to my mind. I would like to talk about the way you communicate your culture. I would like to talk about how do you make sure that you attract the right talent by communicating your culture. So, like I know that recently Mind Valley, for instance, you've been hiring a lot. And how did you leverage your culture to do so, Eleonora?
Yeah, that communication, the way things are said, is extremely important, and that's why even before joining Mind Valley, this was such a fascinating experience to hear about, because and connected to the values before, by the way, it is about the value, and it is even very interesting about the story of the founder. So if the founder is embodying and explaining why these values are so important, it does become such a powerful attraction story. So for example, in our case, vision, he did found Mindvalley in the US, but because it was a few years after 9/11, he was coming from a Muslim country. He was not a Muslim, but he had a lot of restrictions as an entrepreneur in the US. So he decided at some point, okay, fine, I'll go back to my home country. I'll go back to Kuala Lumpur, but I will make the damn best company in the world. So then the world will come to Kuala Lumpur, even though nobody knows about it. So this was such a strong drive to do whatever it took to attract the talent, and he got very resourceful, and on purpose he tried to define early on what is my value. And that's why the unity, because like, okay, I have to leave the US, but doesn't matter where I am, I want to everybody in the world to have the same opportunities, right? So this is one of the messages that he always talked about. And also one other unique, the way Mindvalley is always communicated is not just talk about in terms of job description, but talk about in terms of manifesto. So for example, in the very concretely in the career page of Mindvalley, we do have a page that is the manifesto. And this is like the few beliefs, like the most important beliefs that we have about the world and how work is going to change in the future. And one of those statements is that we are not just a Malaysian company or an American company, we are an Earth company. And this is one of the most common things that candidates quote, because they see it. Or another one is the job is somehow a dirty word. It shouldn't be anymore working 9 to 5, but it should be contributing to the company's mission, and at the same time like having the company helping you achieve your own mission. So these are some of the things that we believe in, and this has made it possible to attract a lot of very, very talented people in every field. And I truly believe that about talent, and that the best talent in the world, they're looking for autonomy, they're looking for challenge, they're looking for innovation and purpose. And for sure, Mindvalley has always communicated the mission. And one way we're doing right now, for example, is just last week we had a virtual event for Estonia, because we do have a second office in Estonia, and we are getting very famous over there, but we are expanding our tech team there for the first time. So Vishen, so our founder and CEO himself, he spoke to more like around 500 people about the mission of Mindvalley, what we're building, all the innovations that are in the pipeline. So these are some ways to really make difference and attract the people that are right for your culture.
Cool. Thank you, Eleonora. Julia, maybe you could answer that question. How do you communicate about your culture to make sure to attract the best talent?
Absolutely. So at Amazon and at AWS, we hire based on these leadership principles, and it starts really with recruiting, and we have a high bar. We are crystal clear about our values, attitudes, and what we expect from people and what we expect from new hires. And this is really a first step in ensuring that, number one, we're hiring the right people based on our culture and our leadership principles. And secondly, that candidates know what to expect if they get hired. Our LPs are authentic and really represent who the company is and how we expect employees to behave. And so using those leadership principles to hire, to reward, to promote, to help in most situations where we have trade-offs, prioritization, strategy, or key scenarios is super important. So these LPs are used every day as a shared vocabulary. And we even have leadership principle awards to really recognize outstanding employees. So this is how we really embody our culture from the very early stages.
Thank you very much, Julia. Charles, your turn.
Yeah, so a lot of things that have been said, I totally agree with. I think there's 3 steps. One is what Julia just mentioned, hiring, interviewing. It started at recruiting. So basically, whatever culture you've defined, you got to screen against it, and you start with this at the very top of the funnel, almost like by interviewing candidates against those attributes. Then you go down to onboarding. That's the second step, where essentially as new hires come and join your company, first day that they on board, you basically already tell them what the culture is and what the values are and how people operate in that system. And then the third thing that I think is really important is leading by example. So if you think about all the leaders in your organization, the moment they stop leading by example or actually enforcing those attributes, you kind of lose that culture. So I think what's really important is wherever it's the CEO, the leaders, whether it's transparency or it's like no meeting Wednesday or it's like, performance review, like everybody's got to do those cultural things to be enforced and to be followed. So just to recap, like in my mind, there's like 3 things: interviewing, onboarding, and leading by example for that.
Cool. Charles, stay with me. I would like to talk about something else. Like, how do you make in your team everybody become a recruiter? Because that's one of your beliefs, right? It's an ambassador's game. You want your own team to be the ones who will refer new people and who will represent the brand and who will attract high talented people.
Yeah, so it's funny, right? Like almost when you interview at a company as a recruiter or as someone in the people space, you kind of want to ask the co-founders or like the leadership team, like what do they do for recruiting? Like, hey, what do you do? How do you spend your day? What have you done in the past to help with recruiting? And you kind of get indicators from the execs or the co-founders, how much do they truly believe and in recruiting? And recruiting isn't something that has to be done, by just one team. You source, then you interview, then you hire. That just doesn't work. That model doesn't apply to any successful company. It's really teamwork. It's from the hiring manager that can help with sourcing and doing interviews and defining the roles and the candidates. It's from the recruiting team helping out as well. It's from the executive team, like enforcing that we have a good bar. And I'm pretty passionate about that. Like, I think the recruiting team is an enhancement, an empowerment to how you're going to recruit at your company. But it's not like, I don't think they can successfully achieve the hiring goals and the hiring bar just on their own. You've got to have partners, and the partners is everybody on the team. That's one thing. The second thing is, if you decide to join a company, you are owner of the company. You essentially like become an owner, part of the company. And being part of the company, being an owner of the company is actually like helping with recruiting. You've got to participate. You've got to interviews. You've got to source. You've got to send referrals. You've got to do all these things to help the company grow. It's not all on the recruiting team. It just won't succeed, I think, with just one recruiting unit. It's got to be everybody. We are all recruiters.
Julia, maybe you can answer as well. How do you make sure that everybody among your team becomes a recruiter?
Yeah, and I agree 100% with Charles. Hiring at AWS is every employee's job. And we often run referral farming sessions, even using LinkedIn. Just to give you my personal experience, when I joined AWS, I took a training called Make Great Hiring Decisions. And then I started shadowing real interviews happening at Amazon. So I would be in a room, very quiet, just observing what's going on. And the objective for me was to listen and to learn how to interview the Amazon way. And after 4 shadowings, it became my turn to interview and to be reverse shadowed. So this means that an experienced Amazon interviewer actually reverse shadowed me to provide feedback on what I could improve. Now I'm autonomous with recruiting, and I interview 3 to 4 people every month. I interview across AWS, all sorts of roles, could be technical, it could be business. And I think it's very, very important to have every single employee involved so that we make sure that we hire people we want to work with eventually, right? We have a process on gathering evidence and data, writing feedback in a very specific way, and also attending debrief sessions and participating in the final decision. As an AWS employee, I have a voice and I'm involved until the very last step, which is also extremely important. So this is my experience at Amazon.
Cool. I'm wondering, what is the Amazon way? When you say, I understand the way to interview, what does it mean?
It means that we have a very structured process. So starting with a phone screen to look at cultural fit and also the job fit. Then having, testing 2 leadership principles per person, writing the feedback in a very data-centric way, then participating to the debrief when sometimes people disagree and you have to counter the other person. So it's very unique. I've never seen this at another company before. So this is why I think it's very peculiar. And before starting, the interviews, you definitely need to learn how it's done.
Thank you, Julia. Eleonora, maybe you could answer as well. How do you make it become a reality that the people become recruiters?
I agree already with the things that Julia and Charles have said. Is first involving people early on, even like the whole team, for example, of a specific position before the recruitment starts. What is the expectation? What is the objective? The attributes for the role, for sure, and also creating space for them to share their network. And it is so important because even if maybe it's the recruiter that is coordinating the process or making sure that the whatever guideline of the companies are followed, but if there is even one person that is interviewing and that is not going to excite the candidate, they are going to decide to go for another company. So referral is a great way, but ultimately every single person that is interviewing is an ambassador of the company and is going to either incentivize or not at all the candidate. So it is important that that there is alignment and a few practical things like aligning interviews, making sure that not everybody's asking the same thing, or and that there is less bias, like not the same type of people looking at the same thing. So having that combination is for sure very important. Yeah.
Thank you, Eleonora. Okay, 2020 has been a special year, right? We've all had to adapt to this very special times. Now, how do you feel that your company has been adapting to this switch to remote work, and how do you feel like the culture in your company in this remote world can really retain people to keep on working with joy, achieving the mission? The mission is the same, but the world has changed. Maybe Charles, you want to start?
Sure. I think it's about sort of the mentality that you want to adapt to, but this is probably true in real life as well. And I think this is probably true for everybody on this panel, as well as all the other guest speakers. Is like, I think what I've been most impressed in 2020 is people that can turn a situation into an opportunity and really turn into something that's like, okay, well, we are in this situation today. Like, how can we make the best out of it? And I mean, maybe this conference today, this summit is like another example of like, okay, well, maybe I would not have been able to be in France for this summit, and now we can do it virtually, and we have more people attending. I think at Facebook, one thing that I've noticed, and I only speak for myself, is that kind of mentality to be like, okay, this is a situation, like, how can we like turn this into the best opportunity? So for one, on the recruiting front, I feel Mark has said many times, like, hey, this 2020 actually needs to be a year where we need to double down and hire even more because we have more opportunities on the market. So we should just go for it. It's about one thing that I noticed as well is we had 1 or 2 folks working remotely, but really not the entire team was working remotely. And now, as you know, everybody is working remotely, and that created such a much better team culture. Everybody not one person feels siloed and isolated, but we have the entire team actually working remotely, having the same setup. So we've got to come together weirdly enough, we've had to come closer together than we were in the past. So I think the best answer is like, how do you adapt to the situation? And instead of having the mentality about, hey, like blaming 2020 because that happened, you're like, okay, well, we have this situation. Let's make the best out of it.
Cool. I love your answer. Thank you, Charles. Julia, maybe you want to keep on that one?
Absolutely. And to your point, Charles, I think we're lucky to be able to work remotely. Many people had to work during those conditions. And I agree. I think it's the mentality at Amazon. And despite our size, we keep a spirit of entrepreneurship, and we hire builders. We empower people to take the right decisions. So you might not be with your manager in the same room on a specific day, but you're given the freedom to make decisions. I was talking about leadership principles. One of our leadership principles is ownership. Ownership is big at Amazon, which means that you are empowered to work on new projects. You are empowered to find new ways to answer to customer needs. You're like the mini CEO of your company. And this gives people purpose. They understand why they're working on a specific project. They see the global picture and they feel like their work matters. So, we've been adapting, absolutely, with recruiting, with onboarding. We've been assigning an onboarding buddy to every single new hire to make sure that in addition of the team and the manager, there is someone to talk to when you have a question, when you have a specific need. Things have changed, but I think, again, it's about who you are deep down and how you're able to transform a problem, a difficult situation, into an opportunity to do even better, to reach even more people, and to stay, united until this situation ends, hopefully.
Cool. Thank you. Eleonora, unless you want to add something, I would like to switch to an important matter. It is diversity. Okay, so in the introduction, my co-founder Osama said that there was an opportunity actually right now in the remote world. Is we feel like as if behind our screens we would be less biased. I don't know, but we feel like it's an opportunity for more diversity to finally feel included in more job opportunities. How do you make sure in your companies? What are the mechanisms that are set up to attract that diversity? Yeah, go for it, Eleonora.
I was thinking very practically. So, for example, there has been such a democratization of our current team in these months, because, as I said, we had traditionally two headquarters, so one in Malaysia, the other one in Estonia, and then the thing that we added is that we started hiring people fully remotely that we haven't done before as much. So that aspect already made us gave a lot more inclusion for sure to our Estonian team, and I hear from them every day. Before, it used to be like time zone difference, or maybe that they were not physically included, and now we're just everybody's remotely. So that has been a big effect on everybody. And at the same time, even when it comes to hiring and onboarding people, the same. Like, we used to have physical onboarding, well, now everybody is online. So there has been some practices for sure that have made it easier to include the current team. And about attracting diversity, this, at least for us, it is an intention, is a clear intention that we don't want talent to be restricted by borders. Connected to the talk and the interview you had just before, but it is a reality, and right now it is a matter of choice. Like, I keep hearing from some organization, and even in my home country, there's still some resistance. Oh, this is just a transitional period. Like, no, what if this is the reality that we choose for the future? Why do we have to go back to the normal situation? What if this is the way we choose to work in the future? so that increased diversity can be a superpower, and it is a choice. Letting go of some control or some standard way of doing things, but in order to gain much more innovation and creativity moving forward.
Cool. Thank you, Eleonora. Charles, at Facebook?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is Facebook related specifically, but I feel like with diversity, there's like two things. There's the idealistic point of view where we want more diversity in the company, and it makes the product better, it makes the work environment better, it's more fair to the world. Like there's like tons of like idealistic views, and then there's the reality. It's like, how do you make it happen? And this is where I think recruiting is like playing a big role, is the how to make it happen, right? So I think the few successes that I've seen and ways to, like roadmaps almost, that you can adapt with diversity is like setting an aspiring goal. It's like, where do you want to be in 4 years from now? Where are you today, and where do you want to be? And by wanting to be is like, where are the gaps in the company, and what kind of demography segments do you want to go after to improve diversity in your company? And recruiting plays a huge role in breaking down that aspiring goal in almost in like the funnel, right? Like the top of funnel, where do we need to increase diversity candidates? In the interview funnel, what are the questions that we're asking? Where are the biases? What are the interviewers? And then how do we hire those candidates, and how do we retain them? That's more of the people team after. But where I think working from home and working remotely has played a huge advantage, and like this is again like, how do you turn the situation into an amazing advantage, is enabling talent coming from different locations. So in the past at Facebook, we used to be very much like location based, like, hey, you're looking for people in Menlo Park, you're looking for folks in Seattle, in New York, in Paris, in London. And now it's like location agnostic. So all of a sudden, your pool of candidate becomes like the entire world. You can just like literally go after people anywhere you want. And that solves the big problem of the top of funnel. All of a sudden you were limited to just like one location, and now you have access to such a much broader place and pool of candidates. So as far as like working from home and working remotely and the COVID situation, this has increased and augmented the pool of candidates dramatically, and has made our work much easier and better.
Cool. Yeah. So there are reasons to be optimistic on that side. And you,
Yeah.
Julia?
Yep. So first of all, I think it's crucial to really understand both terms and their impact in the workplace. I read a metaphor the other day that really resonated with me when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Diversity is being invited to a party, and inclusion is being invited to dance, right? And at Amazon, we have specific trainings on diversity and inclusion, and specifically on the awareness of our unconscious biases. Many people have good intentions when it comes to recruiting a diverse workforce, but they don't realize that their biases get in the way of their decision making. And this is why at Amazon, we rely strongly on data, and we pay very close attention to biases at every step, from writing the job description, resume, review, assessment, pre-brief, interview, etc. Secondly, we have mechanisms to attract diverse talents and build inclusive teams. So top of mind, maybe a few examples. Number one, things that you can do is to partner with your recruiter or your agency to proactively seek diverse talents. If you don't have a diverse talent pool, you're not going to hire diverse people, right? Secondly, to add gender neutral job descriptions. This is so important, making sure that your job description is not perceived as more masculine or more feminine. And you have some tools. You have some tools that can help you gender neutralize your job descriptions. 3, take inclusive hiring training. Be mindful of your blind spots. We tend to choose the people who look like us, who think like us, who talk like us. This is so true. So being aware of our own biases, I think, is also extremely important. And then I go back to your point, Eleonora, sorry. Create diverse interview panels for your loops. The people interviewing the candidates need to come from different backgrounds, have different skills and different experiences. Otherwise, I don't think it works. Good intentions don't work, unfortunately.
Great, thank you, Julia. So I want to be invited to the party. I want to dance as well.
Yes.
and there is one of the things that I want as an employee is I want to dream. And especially, I think it's been accelerated with this lockdown. It was already in the place. We knew that we were a lot about talking about the purpose. Okay, it's not about the paycheck. There is a recent study on LinkedIn. I've seen it 1 week ago, saying that 63% of the people are ready to lower their paycheck and to get rid of the fancy titles if it's for a bad environment. They don't want that, right? So we are no longer able to sacrifice ourselves in the name of getting paid or having a fancy title. How do you make sure, and this will be my last question, then we'll take the questions of the audience. How do you make sure that people can dream and can feel like there is a purpose? How do you connect the role with a purpose concretely? Who wants to start?
Wow, I think this is like one of my biggest life questions that I ask myself literally every day, every single interview that I take, and not only, it's not just about interviewing, because I do have a background in recruiting, but now my role is broader than just recruiting. So it is something that is on my mind every day, because you're totally right. And ultimately, what we spend most of our working, breathing hours at work. So people don't want to spend any more time just to feel miserable every day. And this will be even more so in the future. A full-time job will not even be required. Freelance jobs, part-time jobs, diverse career are becoming so common. And there's I think there's two things that will change over the years. One is what individuals are feeling. So more and more people are just not getting settled with, oh, I just need a job for the paycheck. No, and even it is a choice. Some people decide, fine, I like stability, I'll still go this way. But ultimately, if it doesn't work, I think there's the friction is going to be so strong that at some point breaks. And this is the typical midlife crisis. And now it's happening, by the way, for people that are 25. So it's not midlife crisis anymore. It's just even after a few years of working, if you feel that you're not personally aligned, it does become a moment of, okay, what do I do? And the other side of the coin is the organization. So the recruiters, that I feel like our role as a company is not just attracting and hooking people no matter what, but really be honest. And one way is so in every single interview that I do, I always ask in different version. So what is your mission? What is the most important goal in your life, even outside of work? Because the more that aligns with what the person can learn in the company, the more the employee will be thriving in that environment. And if it's visible that they prefer to go in another direction, then it's fine to say that and to encourage them to do something else. So this one way is in hiring. The other thing is also while people are in the company. So for example, in Mindvalley, we use 2 exercises. One is called the 3 most important questions. So every single person in the company during their onboarding, they write down what do they want to experience in life, how they want to grow, and how they want to contribute to the world. And we have posters around the office about that, so everybody else can see. So we can help each other to be aligned with what we do. The other one is a program we have that is called Lifebook. So giving employees also the space to think, what do I really want in life? Am I in the right place? It pays back. It pays back so many times. So these are some ways to create more alignment in the future from a company point of view.
Thank you very much, Eleonora. Julia, maybe on that one?
Really quickly. From my standpoint, I think that to have purpose, employees need to see the global picture and the impact of what they're doing. We have a rule at Amazon, which is that every internal team should be small enough that it can be fed with 2 pizzas. And the goal wasn't, to cut down on the catering bill, but it's that everything we do is efficient and scalable. When you have a 2 pizza team, the team is fast, is agile, it fosters ownership, autonomy, and those small decentralized teams are nimble and employees can really own and run what they build. I think this is critical, to be an owner and to be the mini CEO of your own company. I think this really matters for people.
Thank you. I like the vision. Charles, one last word.
Yeah.
On the
My point of view on this topic is 2 things. One is leadership and second is growth. So leadership is like, as a company, you got to do everything you can to invest into your leaders or managers. They've got to take trainings. They've got to have the right tools to empower their teams to remove roadblocks. And the way you motivate and the way you keep your employees in the long run is by having very, very strong leaders. And growth, to the extent this is possible with your business, of course, growth is like the one thing that will keep your employees so motivated because it will stretch them. Growth isn't about getting promoted either, or getting to the next level, but it's about maybe thinking about a job that's like a lateral move because you actually increase and gain new skills, and that's a promotion on its own. And so I think when you think about how to motivate your employees and how to keep them, growth is like another big thing that could help. And it's not only about money and the paycheck and getting to the next level, it's about getting new skills and keeping them motivated.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Eleonora. Thank you, Julia. Actually, it's already the end, and I hope that the audience won't hate me, but we can't take any question because we have to move to the next part, which is the most interesting part, the most interactive part, the workshops.